chapter 3 in the book of Jazz reminds us of the importance of disciplined spontaneity. Now, you'll see these jazz musicians come at 3 o'clock today and they'll just show up. They will not have practiced. They don't seem to have a lot of focus. How can they do that when the music is so great? Because after all, this is complicated music. That's what I begin to understand when I watch my son. This is complicated stuff. It's much more complicated than rock music. And I love rock music, but it's much more complicated. I remember the story of the young man that had never played an instrument. And so for Christmas, his father gave him guitar lessons, 3 guitar lessons. So he went to the first lesson and went to the second lesson, but never went to the third lesson. And so his dad asked him, well, why didn't you go to the last lesson? He said, what happened during those lessons? He said, well, during the first lesson, I learned a C chord. During the second lesson, I learned a G chord. And the third lesson, instead of going to the lesson, I got a gig. A gig is a performance. Yeah, I can play rock guitar. I know 3 chords, but jazz is something else. It's complex. So how can these guys just show up and play? What we forget sometimes is they've spent their whole lives mastering an art form. So they can show up and appear to be spontaneous, and they can be playful. And it comes from the mastery of the basics of an art form. That's a principle in life, mastery. And that's true whether it's music or art or sports or anything else. Somebody once came up with something called the 15,000-hour rule. I know some of you are familiar with that. If you practice the basics of an art form or a practice for 15,000 hours, you will achieve a superior level of performance. And any of you who have practiced anything know that's true. I remember when I first started taking tennis lessons. I was so concerned about having a booming forehand, and so I got a really good coach, and I thought she's going to go out there, and in a few weeks I'll be hitting that booming forehand. You know what I did for about a month? This is what I did. I went like this. She hit the ball, and I hit it back like that. Time and time and time again, till I could hit the ball in the same spot 9 out of 10 times. That's called mastery. So when you master something, you can be spontaneous and creative and playful. Well, how does that relate to the spiritual life? We too, as people of faith, practice an art, and it's called the art of loving. Practicing relating to people and reacting to people in a loving way over and over, year by year, so that it becomes second nature to us. Practicing the art of reflection and prayer and meditation. Practicing the art of serving until they become a spontaneous and creative and joyful and even playful part of our lives. And actually, the art of loving is nothing we ever really master, but we can get so good at it that it just kind of becomes second nature to us. So the book of Jazz reminds us of life's infinite possibilities, life's unresolved complexity, the need for disciplined spontaneity. In chapter 4, the book of Jazz reminds us of the possibilities of unlimited collegiality. Now, I know when my son is graded in his music classes on his guitar performance, he's graded as much on how he accompanies someone as his solo work. You know, in a great band, in a great jazz band, there are no stars, there's a great group. Unless you're a Miles Davis or a Louis Armstrong or an Al Hickson or somebody like that, then you can be a star. But there's something about a group playing off each other and working together, that collegiality, which creates a synergy so that the sum is greater than the total of its parts. You know, a great church is like that. The Bible describes the church as a body, with each gifted part making a contribution and each contributing to a healthy and beautifully functioning organism. A body, a community where mutual love and mutual respect and mutual edification dominate. A community which functions to support each other, to celebrate life, to bear one another's burdens. And it's interesting that jazz was really born out of the black struggle by blacks out of the first generation of slavery. And in order to survive, they sang and struggled together. And what developed was a very deep and a very soulful kind of music. Which leads me to the last chapter in the book of Jazz. The book of Jazz reminds us that our lives should be characterized by an unmistakable soulfulness. You see, the only life really worth living is a soulful life. And at the risk of generalizing, I think that instead of living in a soulful culture, we live in a very superficial society. Many of our relationships, even our spirituality, is very surface. We're a nation of dabblers, short on attention span. We're used to having comfortable lives, which never demand that we dig very deep or work very hard or think very deeply. We're a culture that's strong on style but short on substance. And our lack of inner struggle with the things that matter most, the important things, the deep things, the spiritual things, highlight our loss of soul. But jazz plumbs the depths of human emotion, from the blue notes of melancholy to the yellow notes of laughter and celebration. It celebrates the whole spectrum of human emotion. And you know, I love the blues as well. But if you really want to plumb the depths of the blues, don't go to the blues, go to blue jazz. If you want to celebrate the highlights of laughter and creativity, go to those high yellow notes of celebration. You see, spirituality that's worth its salt embraces all of life, the blue and the yellow, the dark and the dangerous, the joyful and the bright parts of life. It embraces all of it with courage, with honesty, and with passion, and with soul. It's what I call living unconditionally, not living in denial of the painful and the discordant notes of life, but integrating every experience as we put our roots deep into the soil of faith. Well, there's my little tutorial on the 5 chapters. And I hope that you come back today at 3 o'clock. And I'll look for you then, and we'll listen to the music. And that book of jazz will be open to us in a much more powerful way than I've opened it to you. And maybe we can have some of these life lessons brought home to us.